This year, UNICEF Philippines commissioned another service provider by the name of EDUCO, or the Fundación Educación Cooperación, to develop another advocacy material. So what you can see is that paghahanda para sa pagbabalik eskwela that builds on children safety and protection. Yan pong nakikita nyo is the initial cover of the advocacy calendar that has been developed just now. Pinafinalize na siya. Also, the NGC through the leadership of development planning po yan, of children, hand in hand, tie up with the EDUCO, concluded another training. So there's the date. It's the capacity, online capacity building activities for multi-grade teachers, focusing on the COVID-19 recovery program for multi-grade children. Yun nga lang, nakapokus siya sa Samar at Northern Samar Division. Let's move on to the next slide, please. Okay, so this year naman, our time has been devoted on the writing of learning activities, as mandated, of course, by the Basic Education Learning Continuity Plan. At sa pagkakataon pong ito, gusto natin talagang pasalamatan ng ating mga naging kasangga. Maraming salamat po sa USE4 at sa USAID. They initiated partnering with DepEd last year. Bandang August, we had the workshop on the development of the third and fourth quarter learning activity sheet. That is in English, Science, and Math, which we have also finalized prior this year. So before end of 2020, nakapag-finalize na. And this is what you're going to receive. Until now, the very orientation training that we are having, please call it for us. And then we continue based on the dates that you can see. We continue with conducting workshops. So that's the date. To be able to have the full round of cycle for the entire school year. And we are still on the process of revising the first and second quarters, LAS, for English, Science, and Math, Filipino, AP, ASP, EPP, MAPE, and Mother Tongue. Kayo pong naririto, maaaring naging kabahagi po ng workshop na yan. Kaya po maraming salamat sa ating mga writers, reviewers, at ang buong team, editorial board or management team ng LAS. Your contributions po will go a long way and for sure will be imprinted in the history of multi-grade programs. Satisfactory as a requirement for quality assurance, the learning activities po have to be validated. Kaya naman, nagawa ang virtual sampling of how we should be able to conclude finalizing the LAS simula ngayong Agosto hanggang Setyembre. So, tulong rin po ng USP score. We have carried out the online validation of the LAS, engaging 3 higher education institutions. Na-invite po natin ang University of the Philippines, Presbyterian State University, and the University of Southeastern Philippines. Kasama ang mga curriculum experts from the Bureau of Curriculum Development and Standards Division at the DepEd field specialists, our master teachers, and senior heads. Okay, so next slide po, Montanan. Thank you. All these activities po are supportive and leading to the operationalization of the Basic Education Learning Continuity Master Plan na base sa resulta ng survey from 70,000 respondents. And we are keeping in our minds the call of our secretary. He said, and I quote, together, let us face the challenge of new normal with the status of the old normal. Ano nga ba po yung old normal status? We sustain our courage, have faith, and enjoy the adventure. And walking you all through this update, we hope it helps situate everyone for the reason why we are attending this training workshop. By the way po, I intentionally did not include the DepEd orders that were recently issued One of it was the GO36, the Guidelines on the Multi-Grade Program Support Fund, which we all know and aware of that this is the main reason for this activity, and the Special Hardship Allowance, yung DO39, where for sure there will be a separate and a more deeper discussion on that. In case po you have any question with what we have shared, you can use the chat box. Maraming salamat po at magandang araw po sa ating lahat. Keep safe and God bless. Back to you. Salamat Ma'am Carmen. Back to you po Ma'am Ian and Ms. Lynn.
Ito po. Maraming salamat po Ma'am Rose for the detailed multi-grade program update.
Ano naman.
Let us welcome Mr. Hani Bunga to present the development and utilization of learning activities here. Why to say that too? That too, that not good. So we can see your slide now. Ito, naka-full slide na to, sir. Ako na po. Audio na lang po, sir.
Okay. Okay. May sound ang Carmen.
Medyo basag, sir, ang audio.
Basag po.
Basag po.
Wait lang ha.
Yan, sir, better. Mas better po ngayon.
Okay.
Yan, sir, better.
Sige. Medyo nag-a-adjust ako dahil ibang laptop yung ginagamit ko. So, yan.
Okay, sir, clear na po. Clear din ang slide.
So, good morning once again. My dear colleagues from different regions, from Mindanao as well as from CAR. Once again, I'd like to thank you, all of you, for accepting our invitation to participate in this orientation training for the utilization of learning activity sheets, or LES. We're happy to meet all of you virtually. In fact, we were expecting less than 100 participants to participate in this training, but our platform as of this time, we're about 500 packs. Okay? So, masaya po kami doon. Hindi lang para sa amin yun, inyo, okay? Kasi ang dami nating participants and ang implication niyan, marami din po tayong magtulong-tulong, okay? Pagdating ng conduct ng ating rollout sa kanya-kanyang region at sa mga division. So, it is an honor to be with you in this training. And I'm sure some of you are writers and reviewers of the LES workshops. I'd like to welcome you again for this multi-grade program activity. So, we are blessed this morning because we have a great number of participants participating in this training. So, masaya kami talaga doon dahil malaki ang taas ng turnout. Okay? Matutuwa yung get-air. Kasi yun naman po talaga ang ating kailangan ma-attain. Okay? Kailangan malawak yung number in terms of capacitating our colleagues in the regions and divisions. So, we're blessed again. Sabi nga nila, each morning brings a new story, It brings us new hope and opportunities. May this day and the rest of the days of this training bring us success in everything we do. So let's make this training workshop productive and meaningful for everyone. Okay? So we're expecting that after this training, we would be able to realize what we are expecting to learn in this training. Okay? Let's move on to my presentation. This presentation will discuss the following. Overview of the AES development. I'm going to discuss how the learning activity sheet is developed. And then I'm going to discuss with you the instructional design of the AES. And then with this discussion, it is expected that you will be able to answer the following questions. What is the process of developing AES? What are the stages of the process of AES development? And then you'll be able also to answer the question of describing the different steps of AES development. So the development of AES supports the implementation of the basic education learning continuity plan of the Department of Education. So the BELCP calls all educators to be innovative and resourceful in delivering quality, relevant, accessible, and liberating basic education legal mandate amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. So the AES will be given to multi-grade learners who are severely affected with this COVID-19 pandemic. As most of these learners are in far-flung areas that do not have access to the internet, they don't have digital learning resources and adequate printed supplementary learning resources while learning at home. So they have missed out on opportunities to master essential knowledge and skills in the absence of a similar instructional package. So that is why the principal idea underlying this project is to develop supplementary learning activities that help students challenge their learning from a range of activities which strengthen learning outcomes and achievement. So this principle supports the notion that each learner can achieve content mastery if provided with appropriate materials and learning approach. So the development of AES is not a new instructional intervention actually. In fact, teachers used to develop similar learning materials for their teaching because they play a crucial role in the education of children, since enrichment activities are provided for mastery of learning. So specifically, the project aims to develop self-directed and differentiated learning activities aligned with the most essential learning competencies or MERS. So covering, of course, all areas. So the learning activities will provide students opportunities to develop their skills and enhance their knowledge outside of a typical classroom setup. So it is believed that effective learning is not just focusing on content delivery. It is a cycle of instruction, implementation, practice, and feedback. Practice and feedback are crucial, so students learn various concepts and skills. So this interventions are very effective to help students become masters at learning essential concepts and skills. So the ALES is designed to give students extended learning opportunities to practice and master essential knowledge and skills they have learned or acquired from different lessons in the self-learning modules. So, in other words, the ALES will help facilitate mastery of learning. If there is a mastery of learning among learners, chances are they can apply certain concepts and processes in a variety of contexts. So, since ALES is designed for mastery of learning, it will not be used to sort or rank students using a traditional grading system. Additionally, the ALES provides learners the opportunity to practice applying essential skills over time within and across disciplines. So these skills include helping them to improve their ability to read, to write, count, and understand information. So furthermore, the learning activity sheets or ALES allows learners to engage in learning tasks independently and to teach them the value of reflecting and evaluating critically the progress of their learning with the guidance, of course, of a teacher, parent, or a guardian. So such learning experience teaches learners to give, interpret, and use feedback regarding the progress of their learning. Okay, so to be able to understand better the development of ALES, especially to our participants who were not involved in the development of this material, let me discuss the process of the development of ALES. Okay, so this diagram shows the 5 stages or processes in developing the ALES. So the 5-stage process is designed to provide guidelines in the development of effective learning activity sheets. Okay? So talagang design namin itong stages na to be able to assure, okay, or ensure effective development of learning activity sheets. Okay? So we started with the analysis and planning stage. So in this stage, the learning competencies and standards are analyzed to understand the goals and objectives for the learning material. Essential skills and knowledge are also identified. Okay? So likewise, effective learning strategies and activities are also are determined for mastery of effective learning outcomes. Okay, that's the first stage process, analysis and planning. So the next stage is the design and development. Okay, let me move on. Okay, so in this stage, we identify learning activities that will be designed and developed to help learners broaden their learning experience so that they can gain expertise in given knowledge and skills. So the next stage is the review and evaluation. So the draft ALES are reviewed by the identified test advisors based on the prescribed guidelines with a focus on content, alignment of activity to the prescribed competency, appropriateness to the grade level, and copyright of the material. Okay? So, in this stage, we really need to reiterate, okay, our writers to observe the copyright law. Okay? Kasi dito tayo minsan na nailagay sa mga, di ba? Kung napapansin niyo sa social media, ang daming mga issues on the DepEd developed material. Especially yung mga may mga issues on copyright. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, many of our writers, our teachers are not aware of the copyright law, okay, in terms of developing instructional materials. Kaya very careful tayo dito sa pag-observe ng ganitong bagay kasi very ngayon talagang yung mga teachers natin, yung social media talagang ginagamit to disseminate information. Kahit sometimes very crucial siya na hindi kailangan mo na i-share, pero out of their excitement dun sa mga ginawa nila, talagang pinapost nila somewhere else. Okay? Sa Facebook o kung saan man yung mga platform na hindi sila aware na yun pala nakaka-copyright yung mga materials na ginamit nila. Kaya very careful tayo dito, hindi lang para sa amin, kung hindi kayo din na nasa regions and divisions because kayo ay nag-develop kayo ng mga contextualized learning materials for the learners. So very careful tayo dito sa mga bagay-bagay na to. Okay? So that's part of the review and evaluation process. And then, yung fourth stage is the quality assurance. The reviewed LES are further evaluated and validated by the non-DepEd resource evaluators or LRE to ensure appropriateness and quality of contents of learning materials based on the prescribed guidelines of DepEd for the development of effective learning materials. Okay? Kaya hindi natin pwedeng gamitin. Okay? Basta-basta yung materials, hindi siya na quality assured by the reviewers outside DepEd. Okay? So, that's the fourth stage. And then yung fifth stage is the refinement and finalization. So in this stage, all learning materials reviewed and evaluated are refined, considering findings and recommendations by the learning resource evaluator. So the refined copies of the LES are submitted to the editorial staff for the final editing and content, use of language, and layouting. Okay? So, ito po yung 5-stage process that we strictly follow in developing the learning activity sheets for elementary grade learners. Okay. So, in a nutshell, as illustrated in this diagram, the development of learning activities is based on the standards and competencies of the K-12 basic education curriculum. Okay? So, the most essential learning competencies are taken from the K-12 curriculum guide. Kaya, lagi kong sinasabi sa mga write shops namin na hindi dapat kayo ma-confuse in terms of the MELC and the curriculum or competencies from the curriculum guide Dahil yung MELS ay nanggagaling po yan sa ating curriculum guide ng Citizens Basic Education Program. Okay? Na-notice namin na walang pagkakaiba. Halos walang pagkakaiba. Yung mga competencies na makikita din dito sa mga MELS. Competencies para makategorize siya as most essential learning competencies, very few lang po sa ibang learning areas at saka grade levels. But basically, andun pa rin yung mga learning competencies na nag-i-exist sa ating curriculum guide. So, yun po lagi namin pinapaulit na baka isipin ng mga teachers natin, iba si MELS, ibang competencies siya, at iba rin yung mga competencies na nasa CG. Okay? Ang ginawa namin, we have to analyze whether or not, ano ba yung makikita sa MELS, ano din makikita sa curriculum guide. Okay? So, the learning activities will provide learners with additional learning opportunities to master the desired knowledge and skills and further develop the values and attitudes they have already begun to acquire from different lessons. So the activities may come in different forms and styles, but they all have a common purpose. Okay? Yung pinaka-main purpose is to support the learner's enrichment of foundational knowledge and skills that help them be a better person in the future. So the process of learning is more than doing a learning task to achieve the mastery level. Okay? So the learners will have to undergo learning reflection after performing its set of related learning activities. Because in every set of ELS, there are 3 differentiated activities. Okay? So we provide reflection activities for these learning exercises. Okay? So the purpose is to let the learners step back their learning progress and achievement and to help them better understand where they are headed for learning the lesson. So the process makes learners also aware of their strengths and weaknesses by determining their accomplishments, their gains, struggles, challenges, or obstacles for learning. So, and the ones that require some more improvement. So that's the purpose of giving them the reflection activities as part of the design of ELS. Now, how do we start writing the ELS? Okay? Maybe some of you, tinatanong nila doon sa survey questions natin sa yung na-discuss kanina ni Ma'am Carmen, talagang naka-highlight po yung gusto nilang matutunan kung paano i-develop yung quality learning activity sheets. Okay? So, how do we start writing the ELS? So, I'm going to discuss one by one para mas maliwanag po sa inyo na hindi po ginawa yung ELS ng dire-diretso lang. Okay? Na sabihin lang natin sa writers, okay, you may go on writing with your learning activities. Total, meron na rin kayong mga MELS dyan. Hindi po ganun yung process. Kung na-observe niyo kanina, bago natin sinimulan gawin or i-design yung ELS, in-establish mo na namin yung processes. Okay? So, as part of the stage 1 process, planning is very important. Okay? So, how do we start writing the ELS? Of course, we started with a good planning. Okay? because good planning is the first step to effective writing of the ALA. Okay, so we believe that the step will help us design effective learning activities. Okay, so the step includes designing the learning activity plan matrix or LAP. Okay, so the LAP is necessary before writing the supplementary learning activity. Okay, because it will serve as the writer's guide or writer's guide in developing the learning material. So that's the first step that we do, okay, in developing the learning activity sheet. So we started with a good planning, with the learning activity plan matrix. Okay. So before preparing the EAP or learning activity plan, we require our writer that they should have to identify the learning standards and competencies. Okay. Also, they need to determine expected learning outcomes. Okay. To help them determine the learning outcomes, I ask them to consider this question. What are the most important concepts, ideas, and skills I want learners to practice and master? Determining specific expectations or learning outcomes is the first and perhaps the most important thing in designing the learning activities. Only when you have identified specific essential concepts and learning skills can you design learning activities that give students extended learning opportunities to practice and master the concepts and skills. Okay. Now that you have identified important concepts and skills, this time you are going to decide what specific activities you will design to help students further understand and apply what they have learned. Okay? To be able to decide on what kind or what activities are effective, you need to answer this question. What kind of learning activities should I design to help learners master the essential concepts and skills? So keeping those important ideas in mind, the writers now can proceed to the preparation of the AAP. Okay? So again, the AAP should include expectations, okay, and learning outcomes from the national standards and learning competencies taken from the most essential learning competency. Okay? So, ulitin ko po, kanina sinasabi ko na talagang tinignan talaga namin ano yung pagkakaiba ng MELT at saka yung na nasa curriculum guide natin na naka-assign per learning area, per grade level, at saka per quarter. Okay? So, that's it. And then, we also include topics, paano yung mga topics na i-highlight or mabibigyan emphasis in the development of learning activities, and then the essential skills to master, okay, and then the learning activities, instructional resources to use, okay, ito importante, okay, kailangan i-highlight nila ano yung mga related instructional resources develop the material. So, dito minsan very careful din talaga tayo kasi since mayroon silang mga references, sometimes they are not aware na talagang copy and paste develop such kind of thinking among themselves. Isipin nila okay lang kasi ginagamit naman ito sa classroom. We encourage them to create their own original version, okay, of the materials or learning activity. So, mag-create talaga kayo ng sarili ninyo. Kahit yung mga references na gagamitin ninyo, that will serve as references lang in terms of adapting effective strategies. Okay, anong klase ng activities yung fit sa learning competency na ganito. So, yung mga ganong klase lang ng idea sa gusto natin kunin doon sa mga references na gagamitin. Okay? But, iwasan natin yung mag-copy and paste. Okay? Dahil mayroon kaming way of detecting kung ang lahat ng activities na yun ay kinapi in toto from the internet or from the textbook. Okay, malalaman dito natin yan. Okay, so kaya may mga writers talaga na talagang hindi maiwasan. Mayroon talagang nakalusot. Pero pagdating sa pag-QA, pagka-quality assure, doon na namin nakikita na it's not actually the original version. Those activities were taken from other sources. Okay? So that's the LAP, that's the content of the LAP. Again, ang LAP po ay writer's roadmap of what students need to learn more and master. Okay. Now, so once tapos na yung LAP, okay, alam mo na what in writing and how you are going to do it. You have a better opportunity to come up with a quality learning activity sheet. Okay? Ganun ka-importante. Yung first stage na yon na planning stage with the LAP. Okay? Let me share with you who are these Confucius, a Chinese philosopher, a man who does not plan will find trouble at his door. That is why talagang mahigpit kami. Sa planning stage pa lang, if hindi na-aprobahan ng kanyang reviewer, yung kanyang LAP, she cannot or he cannot proceed to the development of the learning activity sheet. Okay? So, now, there are two basic parts of learning activity sheet. Okay, part 1 contains the teaching portion, the learning activities, and the objectives. Okay, and part 2, ito yung mga reflection activities. There are two reflections actually, reflection 1 and reflection 2. Okay, so the first part of the EPS is what we call the teaching portion. Pag sinasabi natin teaching portion, different po ito sa mga teaching portion na ginagamit natin sa mga modules. Okay? In this part of the EPS, the writer writes a brief and concise description of the topic and the learning activities that need to be done by the learner. So very brief lang. It's a sort of parang review lang, recalling of the information that they have learned from that particular topic. So, ang assumption dito, hindi mo ibibigay yung GDS na to, that unless napag-aralan ng bata yung topic na to. Okay? That means, tatapusin niya muna ang pag-aralan ng module niya, saka niya gagawin yung mga activities dito sa India. Okay? So, that is why, yung teaching portion, ay talagang, ito ay mga important or essential information lang. That will help students bring on what they have learned from that particular topic. So, kailangan lang nila talagang ma-refresh ulit so that they will be able to perform the succeeding learning activities na na i-undergo nila. Okay? So, the discussion of this part of the EBS should emphasize the importance of learning and mastering the concept and skills. Okay? So it should highlight the usefulness of such skills in real life situations. Okay? Para medyo ma-encourage naman sila the importance of doing those activities, kailangan i-highlight natin. Bakit kailangan natin i-master? Okay? Yung mga natutunan natin sa topic na to. Gaano ba ito ka-importante sa buhay natin? So, ganun yung realization na i-emphasize natin sa learning activity. Thus, we encourage our writers to provide examples of the application of such skills in a certain or in a real-life situation when necessary. Okay? So, the idea will help the learners realize the importance of mastering the skills, which will help them in many areas of life. Okay? So in other words, the idea of the teaching portion is to help the learners understand that it is not enough to learn the concepts and skills, but more importantly, they will discover how essential they are to become a better person. Okay, now let's proceed to the discussion of the design of the learning activity sheets or LES. So the contents of the LEP are the basis for the development of the LES. Okay, so the second part of the LES contains the learning activities. Okay. So, kanina, teaching portion, and this part followed by the learning activities na. Okay? Mag-activity A, activity B, activity C, or activity 1, activity 2, activity 3. So, this part of the EBS is the most challenging part, okay, for the writers, because they need to observe several factors in designing the activities. Okay? Marami silang dapat i-observe. Okay? Mayroon kaming criteria that they should have to follow. Hindi lang, okay, gusto ko, nakita ko ito sa isang source, maganda ito. Hindi ganon. Okay? We're helping the writers analyze paano i-develop yung learning activities that align with the learning objectives. Okay? Of course, so we provide them with the guidelines or criteria that they should have to observe in designing learning activities. Okay, so one of the criteria, okay, na binigyan namin sa kanila, kailangan activities should be aligned with the learning competencies. Okay, kailangan naka-align siya sa learning competencies. And they should be varied or differentiated by adapting different strategies that will enable the children to challenge their ability in learning the concept and skills without, of course, neglecting the appropriateness of learning activities to their cognitive level and learning experience. Okay? So, yan po. And it should be, the learning activity should be developmentally appropriate. So we encourage our learners that learning activities should be appropriate to the cognitive level and learning experience of the child. We also encourage our writers to develop learning activities that should promote active engagement and facilitate mastery of learning. So these activities will require learners to independently perform tasks, solve problems, create products. Yan. Okay? So kung after siguro mayroon tayong mga workshops na ibibigay sa inyo. One of those workshops is to walk through, okay, the LES model Okay? Mapapansin ninyo doon na may mga simulation, games, puzzles, problem solving, etc. So these activities are active learning activities since the learners takes a more active role in performing the learning activities. So those are the criteria that we observe in developing learning activities. Again, it should be aligned with the stated learning competencies, valid to address diversity or diverse learning styles of our learners. Okay, that is why differentiated yung mga activities natin. They should be developmentally appropriate. Pag sinasabi natin developmentally appropriate, kailangan appropriate siya sa cognitive level, children's age, di ba? Kung hindi siya kung grade 3 siya, huwag mo siyang bigyan ng pang grade 4 or pang grade 2. Okay? So, the activities should be responsive to social and cultural context. And importante, they are all achievable. Okay? But challenging. Okay? Kailangan hindi lang siya yung madali sa bata para ma-achieve lang na perform nila activity, but something that will challenge their ability, okay, to master the skill. Okay? So then something that would encourage learners' active engagement and facilitate effective mastery of learning. Okay? So, kung hindi ito ma-observe, I'm sure hindi din guided yung mga writers natin on how they can develop effective learning activities. So take note that inappropriate learning activities can be frustrating for the learners if they are not prepared to perform the task. That is why it is important to note that the contents of learning activities should enable learners to explore in greater depth and broaden their learning experiences so that they can gain expertise in essential knowledge and skills and enhance their ability to transfer such knowledge to real-life situations. Now, I am showing with you the sample development process of skills and concepts in mathematics curriculum. Okay? Sample lang po ito. Okay? Ito in relation kung paano nila sinimulan yung paggawa ng mga appropriate o sabihin natin effective learning activities. Okay, so the mathematical skills are applying and solving problems. Okay, to further develop and practice the application of skills, you need to identify strategies and activities that will broaden or improve the development of such mathematical skills to the learners. Napaka-importante i-design. Okay? Paano ko siya ma-strategize para itong mga skills na to, okay? Particularly on the application and solving problems ay may develop sa mga estudyante. Okay? Yun yung tanong dyan. Okay? So in this example, learning opportunities are provided. Okay, to let the students first select appropriate materials, concepts, and processes for particular tasks and applications. Second, apply concepts and processes in a variety of contexts. Third, analyze problems and plan and approach to solve them. Then fourth, select and apply a variety of strategies to complete tasks and projects or solve problems. Please reflect upon and evaluate solutions to problems. Okay, so these strategies will help ensure effective enhancement of the desired mathematical skills, which are applying and solving problem. So, may maliwanag na direction kung ano yung bigyang pansin ni writer para may develop yung tinarget nating skills in mathematics or math skills. Okay? Yan po. Now, I'm showing with you the Bloom's taxonomy. Okay? Ito yung revised version of Bloom's taxonomy or taxonomy of knowledge, okay, by Bloom. Now, as a framework to support the effective development of LES, this revised Bloom's taxonomy is used, okay? So, ginamit natin siya in designing the learning activities, okay? So, what is Bloom's taxonomy? Okay, maybe tatanong sa akin yan. So, at this point, you may be wondering why we should use Bloom's taxonomy. Bloom's taxonomy is a classification of the different objectives and skills that help our writers create appropriate learning activities for the level of learning that is taking place. Okay. So, for example, a learning activity focusing on the lower levels of learning, the activity that involves, mayroong guhit dito Sorry
Sir, para mawala po yan, sir, mag-stop share kayo tapos pasok po kayo ulit. Mariremove po yung mga gilid na yun.
Stop share, ayun, natanggal siya good. Okay? Wala akong ginagawa actually So, sige. Thank you. Sino yung nagtanggal noon? Okay po. Sorry Let me continue Okay, so ulitin ko po. For example, pag ginamit natin si Bloom's taxonomy, okay, for the learning activity focused on the lower levels of learning, this particular activity, halimbawa, an activity that involves analysis and creation. Okay? Kung pipiliin mo siya, o kung ang activity na ibibigay mo siya ay pang lower level of learning siya. Okay? Hindi pwedeng ibigay mo igawan mo ng activity na pang higher level, such as analysis and creation. Okay? So, yung pinaka-lower level dyan is remembering, pataas tayo, understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, and creating. Kung yung emphasis ng learning competency ay pang lower level siya, therefore, ang i-create mong activity ay parallel with that level of learning. Huwag mo siyang bigyan ng activity na nag-a-analyze siya o nag-a-apply siya ng certain concepts. Otherwise, hindi consistent yung activity mo with that particular level of learning. Okay? So, yun po yung i-emphasize natin dito. Okay. So, magiging unsuitable for the learners kung yung activity natin ay hindi naka-align doon sa learning competency natin, and then ano yung level of knowledge niya. Okay, importante po yun. So, the Bloom's taxonomy helps instructions set the activities at the right level. Okay? Siya po yung nagbibigay ng guide sa atin para nasa right level lagi yung i-develop nating learning activity. Okay, so again, ulitin natin, there are 6 levels of learning in this modified or revised taxonomy of Bloom that can be used to structure the learning objectives and activities. Okay, so it is worth taking the time, therefore, to get familiarized with the categories of the taxonomy, their order and their meaning. So this illustration shows yan po, siya po ang nagbibigay kung ano yung different levels of knowledge that we consider in writing the learning activities for the learners. Okay? So, it is also shown here some examples of keywords. Okay? Ano yung mga keywords or mga verbs na ina-associate natin with each level of knowledge. Halimbawa, sa remembering. Okay? Remembering is the level 1 or the lowest level. It is the most intellectual skill and the ability for learning. So ano yung mga keywords or mga verbs na ina-associate natin dito sa particular level of knowledge na to. Okay? Ito yung mga define, duplicate, list, memorize, recall, repeat, state. Yan. Okay? So ang tanong ngayon dyan, can the student recall or remember the information? So ito yung mga sample question na pwede mong tanongin sa sarili mo in relation to the activity na dinevelop aligned with this particular level of knowledge. Okay? Now, let's consider the learning objective. Okay? Okay, so in this slide, yung learning objective dito ay describe the 7 steps of the research process when writing a paper. Okay? First, consider the action verb in the learning objective. Okay? So ano po yung action verb dito? Ano po yung action word dito or verb? Okay? Yun, naka-red po siya. Yan po ay describe. Okay? So, in the Bloom's taxonomy, okay, describe falls within the knowledge and comprehension levels of Bloom's taxonomy. Okay? Doon siya pumapatak sa remembering and understanding levels. Okay, ng Bloom's taxonomy. So, therefore, the sample learning activities for this level should provide students with opportunities to describe the steps of the research process when writing a paper. So remembering and understanding are the most basic intellectual skills and abilities for learning. So binibigyan tayo ng guide kung paano natin yung activities base sa learning objective dito sa Bloom's taxonomy. So, nasa right direction tayo. So, hindi tayo kailangan mag-isip o magduda, tama kaya itong ginawa ko, sure bull kaya ito, naka-align kaya ako. So yung ganung mga klase ng questions na possible na we are unsure, okay? Hindi tayo sigurado. So yung na-develop nating activities are aligned with the learning objective or aligned with the levels of learning as prescribed in the Bloom's taxonomy. Okay? Yan po. Okay. So, let's move on. Here are the 3 learning activities that may be considered to develop the given learning activities. Okay? So ito po, kasi kailangan mo rin i-describe kung ano yung mga possible activities na i-develop mo. Okay? So, pwedeng isipin mo, okay? Itong mga suggested activities lang to, okay? Pwedeng makonsider natin activities that you may ask students to complete a quiz consisting of multiple choice questions where the students choose the correct steps. Okay? You may also consider that activity as creating a poster highlighting the steps. Or you may also consider an activity that would allow the students to recite the steps. Yan. Okay? So yan yung mga ganung klase ng mga plan that you may consider para makikita mo yung alignment. Okay? Alignment ng mga activities vis-a-vis doon sa learning objective. Okay? Ayaw gumalaw, Ma'am Carmen, yung ano ko. Sorry. Slide. Oh my God. Naghang yung slides ko. Yung sounds ng Carmen, okay lang po ba?
Yes. Very clear ang audio no?
Okay. Ayun. Okay, wait. Naghang. Okay. So, let me proceed. So, the learning activities may be classified. Now, nasa na tayo? Sa development of activities na tayo. Okay? So, the activities may be classified as level A, level B, or level C activities, or a combination of different levels depending on learning objectives. Ulitin ko, kanina nabigyan ko na mention ko na to be able to address the different learning styles or needs of our students, we require our writers to develop differentiated learning activities. Okay, ito na po. So the activities will be classified as A, B, C, or a combination of different levels depending on the learning objectives. So we use Bloom's taxonomy to ensure that learning activities are set at the right level. Okay, for example, level A activities are set again for lower level cognitive skills, while level B and level C activities are set for higher cognitive skills. Okay? Ayan po. So, each set of learning activities are designed to carry out the same learning goals, but include somewhat different problems, different questions or prompts, as well as the level of learning. So, these activities are designed for enrichment of learning. Okay? For mastery. Diba? Yun talaga yung pinaka-intention ng EBS. Okay? Therefore, we expect the writers to provide activities that will provide valuable, challenging, and rewarding learning experiences among our learners to grow them, their knowledge and skills of the topic. Okay? So, the challenge for the writers in writing the learning activities is to ensure that these activities allow students to engage in truly valuable learning experiences. Okay? So the activities must provide students with opportunities to pursue their interests, extend their understanding, and broaden their learning experiences. Okay, so now let me discuss one by one each type or category of activity, okay, or activity. So for level A activities, okay, they are designed if the learning objective falls within the remembering and understanding level. Okay? So, bininyagan lang namin siya ng level activity. Ibig sabihin, nag-start kami sa baba. Okay? Level B naman sa taas. Okay? Yun yung pinaka-highest level, yung level C. Okay? So, yung level A activities, okay, ulitin natin, falls within the remembering and understanding level. Okay? So, level 1 is remembering. Okay? You may ask the learners to recite something you have taught them and ask them to quote information from previous lessons, lectures, or notes. So alternatives include multiple choice questions or simple question lang. Okay? Yan yung pwede mong i-emphasize doon sa iyong activity for this particular level. Okay? Level 2, which is understanding, you may ask learners to demonstrate their understanding of the material by explaining ideas or concepts or interpreting and translating what has been learned. Yan. Okay, so take note of this. Okay, mayroon ng classification, okay, between remembering and understanding. Habang pataas na pataas yung level of learning, ay kailangan mas iba din yung activity mo. Okay? Sometimes we are not aware na dalawang skills yung kailangan nating i-master sa bata, and yet yung binigay nating activities ay pang-remembering lahat. Okay? Yung pang-understanding, hindi natin nabigyan ng pansin. Yun yung kailangan natin tingnan lagi. Okay? Take note na mayroon talagang pagkakaiba. Habang pataas ng pataas yung in-emphasize natin skills that we need to develop to our learners. Okay? So for level B activities, okay, these activities are designed if the learning objective falls within applying and analyzing level. Okay? So, ito na yung level 3 and level 4. Okay? Level 3 is applying. So, paano mo gawan ng activity ito? So, you may ask the learners to apply their knowledge and by using it in another familiar situation from the one in which it was learned. Okay? So, the application may include rules, methods, concepts, principles, and theory. Okay? Yan, pwede mo yang i-apply. Okay, for the level 4 level, dito po yung analyzing. Okay? Critical thinking na yan ang category niya. So you may ask learners to analyze by breaking down information into parts to explore understanding and relationships in an attempt to identify evidence for a conclusion. Okay? So yan po yung level B activity. Okay? So the learning objective falls within applying and analyzing levels. Okay? For level C activities, these activities are designed if the learning objective falls within evaluating and creating. Ito yung pinakamataas na level. Okay? So level 5 is evaluating, critical thinking yan. And then level 6 is creating, also critical thinking. So for level 5, you may ask learners to evaluate something using in-depth reflection, criticism, and assessment to justify a decision or course of action. Okay? And then for level 6, which is creating, you may ask the learners to create something, okay, by generating new ideas, products, or ways of viewing things. Okay? So, those are the different levels of activities aligned with the Bloom's taxonomy. Okay? So, in summary, level A activities require learners to complete the task on the lower level, remembering and understanding level. Okay? So level B activities require the learners to apply and analyze the content. And then level C activities ask the learner to complete the task in the areas of evaluating and creating. So remember that we do not learn math just by reading, just by memorizing or recalling material. We must have to activate our learning by talking about it, writing about it, relating it to the past experiences, applying it to our daily life. In short, making it part of ourselves. Okay? So, again, yung design ng learning activities can be a combination of different levels of activities depending upon the learning objectives. Okay? Okay, so yun yung kailangan naka-align tayo. Okay? Ang Bloom's taxonomy ay siya yung magbibigay ng guide sa atin so that i-direct tayo to the right direction. What particular activities are we designing so that we would be able to achieve this particular learning objectives. Okay? So, now let's move on. That's the first part of the AES. Okay? Teaching portion, learning activities, and then meron siyang answer key. Okay? So, nag-provide din tayo ng answer keys para ma-check natin yung learning progress ng bata dun sa bawat activity. Okay, now let's proceed to the next discussion, which is the second part of the AES, ang tawag namin dyan, Learning Reflection Sheet or LRS. Okay, so kanina we started with AAC and then we proceed to the development of AES. This time, LRS tayo. Okay, or Learning Reflection Sheet. Okay, ito po yung second part of the ELF that contains reflection activities. Okay, that students can use to reflect on targeted learning goals and activities. So, the ELF is more than doing a learning task to achieve the mastery level. The learners will have to undergo learning reflection after performing a set of related activities. So, the learning activities ask the students to share some bit of reflection of the learning processes, okay? What they do well or struggle with, and what to articulate what they have learned or still need to learn about the learning activities or experience. Okay? So, ulitin ko po, there are two stages of learning reflection. First, learning reflection 1, it requires the learner to think about his or her performance based on an understanding of a concept and skill she or he has mastered. Okay? And then the reflection 2 requires the learner to describe how he or she feels while working on the activities in the lesson. So, maliwanag po yung purpose natin of providing these two reflection activities. Okay, let's move on. So, I'm going to discuss the content of the learning reflection activity. Okay? So, for the learning reflection 1, ito po yung actual, okay? Actual reflection 1 activity. So, for the reflection 1, mayroon tayong tatlong tables po na dapat tandaan, okay? Let's discuss this one by one para mas klaro po sa ating lahat. There are actually 3 tables that the child and the parent or the teacher or the guardian need to understand to accomplish the activity. Okay? So, in this particular part of the meron po kami instruction to the parent. Kasi siyempre sa bahay ito na kami para i-guide yung bata. Okay? Hindi siya basta lang gagawin ng bata. Otherwise, hindi niya gagawin sa reflection activity. So, we provide instruction to the parent para i-assist yung mga bata. Okay?
Pasa lang sa
yung instructions natin dyan are meant, okay, for the parents or for the guardian to on how they can assess, okay, how they can assess the learners in understanding the questions so that he or she can, the child can make the necessary response. Okay, yan. So, kailangan nilang gawin yon. Otherwise, baka kung ano yung gagawin nila dito sa part na to. Okay? So, for table 1, ito, ayan, naka-plus po siya. Ito po yung scoring guide. Okay? Scoring guide siya. Dahil i-determine nila yung kanilang score. Sila yung mag-self-assess. Okay? Reflection siya. Okay? Mag-self-evaluate sila mamaya ng kanilang learning performance. Kaya prior to accomplishing the next task, ito muna yung kailangan nilang alamin. So mayroon tayong description of kung paano nila bibigyan ng score ang kanilang performance. Okay, this particular table is a scoring guide. It shows the specific performance level and each corresponding point and what it means. Okay, so nakalagay dyan, yung first column is the performance level. Mayroon tayong 4 na level. Yung pinakamataas is very good, going down, good, fair, next, needs more effort. Yan, okay, so each of these levels ay meron siyang corresponding point. So for very good, 4 siya, good, 3, and fair, 2, need more effort, 1. Okay? So what it means, okay, para sa bawat level. For very good, ibig sabihin, the child has able to complete all the activities on time with no mistakes. Okay? Yan po. And then good, okay, with corresponding point 3, the child was able to complete all the activities on time with a few mistakes. Okay? Fail naman, with corresponding points of 2, if the child was able to complete all the activities but with mistakes of at least 1/2 of the total number of items in the activity. And then 1, okay, ito po yung needs more effort. So, the child did not complete at least 1/2 of the total number of items in the activity. Okay, yan po ang scoring guide. Okay? So, ito yung sinasabi ko na dapat guided siya by the parent para maintindihan niya yung scoring guide nito. Okay? Siguro sa simula pa lang, medyo kailangan talaga ipaliwanag sa mga bata to, but eventually, as they go on with the rest of the week, siguro maintindihan na nila. So, simula lang siguro naman siguro mahirapan yung bata dito. Okay. So, then ito po yung counterpart natin for Filipino. Ito yung translation ng Table 1 sa Filipino language. Ginagamit natin ito para dun sa mga Filipino subjects. Okay? Ayan po. Katangi-tangi, mahusay, lubos na kasiya-siya, dagdagan pa ang pagtitipan. So, napaka-friendly ng ating mga description, okay, ng kanilang performance level para hindi naman sabihin nagiging judgmental tayo doon sa performance ng bata, di ba? So, ito talaga yung edited na version ng scoring guide with description based on the series of discussions, review, and validation of the materials. Ito na yung pinaka-design. Okay? So, let's move on to Table 2. Okay? Ang Table 2 naman contains the expected learning outcomes that the learners must have to reflect based on his or her performance in the learning exercises. Okay, so the learning outcomes were crafted based on the learning competency being mastered by the learner. So the child determines his or her score or performance level in reference to scoring guide in Table 1. Okay? Since mayroon na siyang idea kung paano niya isi-self-evaluate or isi-self-assess ang kanyang performance, learning performance, ito na, kailangan niya ng bigyan ng score ang kanyang learning performance. So, ang learning performance ng child ay translated into different learning indicators. Okay? So, hindi po siya overall learning performance. Okay? So, ang ginawa natin dyan, binalikan lahat ng activities, okay, na ginawa ng writer, and then tiningnan kung anong mga skill ang kailangan i-master or i-practice ng bata or i-enhance ng bata. So ito po yung mga sample learning indicators na naka-align po siya sa mga learning activities. So actually there are 5 learning indicators. Normally nasa minimum of 5 learning indicators ang bawat set of learning activities. For example, ito kinuha namin ito sa LES, Mathematics LES. Yung learning indicators na kailangan i-practice ng bata or i-master is, I can identify the divisor, dividend, and quotient in a division equation. I can tell the answer I can answer that the answer is in decimal form if the divisor is greater than the dividend. I can tell the steps in dividing whole numbers with decimal quotient. So these are just some of the examples of learning indicators that the child should have to evaluate. Okay? Ano ang performance level ko pagdating dito sa bawat skill? Okay? Yan. So, siya na ang mag-rate ngayon dyan. Okay? Then, para malalaman niya ang overall score. Okay? Doon sa learning activities na yun. And then, ito naman yung translation ng Table 2 for Filipino subject. Okay, and then we have Table 3. Table 3 is the guide in determining the mastery level of the child based on his or her overall school performance in Table 2. Okay, so once the mastery level is determined, the child needs to know what she or he should do next. Okay, for example, if the total score of the child falls within 16 to 20, okay, ang mastery level niya is very good, right? Okay, very good siya. Okay, therefore, ang ibig sabihin nito, pag very good ang category ng kanyang mastery level, we need to congratulate the child. Okay? The child will be congratulated because he did what is expected of him. Okay? So yan po, may mga kanya-kanyang interpretation po yan. Okay, so if the overall score of the child falls within the range of 11 to 15, that means ang kanyang mastery level is good. So therefore, sasabihin natin sa bata, try other similar activities or tasks. You can request for more activity sheets from your teacher. Okay, so this table includes targeted suggestions about what students must do to correct their learning difficulties, okay, and to master the desired learning outcomes. Yan po ang purpose niyan. Kaya may mga tayo dyan, may mga suggestions tayo for the child on what to do next. Okay, and then ito po yung reflection, in Tagalog, ito translation ng Table 3 for Filipino subjects. Okay, so yan po yung reflection 1 natin, activities. Okay, So, Meron po siyang 3 important tables talaga na kailangan natin maintindihan para yung bata ay guided siya kung paano niya i-accomplish ito. And then for reflection 2, okay, ito yung sinasabi natin kanina na ito yung magbibigay, okay, ng idea sa atin kung ang bata ay satisfied ba o hindi doon sa mga learning activities na pinagagawa natin sa kanila. Okay? So, yan po yung reflection 2. Okay? Dalawang klase po yan. May design tayo for grades 1 to 3, pang lower level siya. Pag lower grade, ito po yung klase ng reflection po na ibibigyan natin sa kanila. Okay? So, basahin ko yung direction. Check the page that describes your answer to the question, how did you feel as you worked on the activities in the lesson? Okay, i-check lang nila ito. Supposed to be may line dito sa taas ng happy, sad, or confused. Okay? Yan. Yan po. Okay, i-check lang ng batang mag-aaral yan from grades 1 to 10 yung kanila. And then, meron tayong katumbas na Filipino translation ito. Yeah. And then for grades 4 to 6, okay, ito naman po ang kanilang reflection 2. Open-ended questions po siya. Okay, dalawang questions po yan. Iba siya sa lower grade. Okay, so sasagutan lang ng bata yan. First question is, how do you feel about your ratings in reflection 1? Question 2, what are your insights for realizations? Okay, so that's the entire design of the AES. Okay, so tatlo lang tandaan natin. We started with the AAT and then development of AES and then LRS or learning reflection sheet. So we are hoping that the use of AES will result in memorable and meaningful learning experiences for all learners in the multi-grade schools. Those learners can feel connection of learning with AES to their future lives. Okay, sana yun yung na-expect natin mangyari sa ating mga learners in the multi-grade schools. Okay, so let me show you the proposed cover. Ito na yung cover for the 3rd and 4th quarter. Ganito yung design. Kasi ito yung ibibigay namin sa divisions to be printed and distributed to all multi-grade schools. English, Science, and Mathematics po yung mauna for 3rd and 4th quarter. Para pagdating ng December, naka-ready na po yan and then i-distribute natin yan for in time of 3rd quarter. Okay? I think yung 3rd quarter, start ng February. Okay? So, tamang-tama lang, timing na siya. And then, mayroon na rin tayong 4th quarter for English, Science, and Mathematics. So, continue lang po yung pag-develop natin ng ADS na to. Actually, ongoing na yung meeting na 1st and 2nd quarter. Okay? Yun po yung kasunod na i-distribute natin hopefully next year. Okay? Para matagdagan din sa mga materials nito. Okay, so let me end my discussion with this quote. Education is not the learning of facts, but the training of the minds to think. That's according to Albert Einstein. So once again, thank you very much to all of you, and have a great day.
Thank you very much, James, for your discussion on the development and utilization of learning activities. Ma'am Ian or Ma'am Lynn?
Thank you, Ma'am Carmen. Thank you, Sir James, for the extensive discussion on the development and utilization of learning activities.
So before we conclude our day 1, here are a few reminders. We are sharing with you the link to the registration form. Please register if you haven't done so. And then here are the links also for the attendance sheet and the reflection form. For tomorrow, for session 4, we will have breakout sessions and we will be needing copies of the LAS and SLM. So you can download the file as well as the questions for session 4 using this link. We also shared these links in the chat box and in the Facebook chat group. And then additional reminders for session for tomorrow, please identify.
Ma'am Ian, hindi po namin nakikita yung slide. Ayan. Thank you. Okay na po.